Hello, my love, and welcome back. Today, I want to share some of my favorite practices when it comes to manifesting money and not only shifting your subconscious beliefs around what you're worthy of, what's possible for you, what is available, but also shifting your energetic signature and allowing yourself to open up to receive more. So these are all different things that I've been practicing over the years. I'm going to dive into mindset, energetics, masculine and feminine components to money and what that looks like. And yeah, we'll see where this takes me. But over the years, I have gone from like extreme highs and extreme lows, at least in my personal perception in regards to money. So I went from wanting to manifest my first 5K, 10K, then 20K months in my business, doing deep quantum healing hypnosis work to open up to a 50K month and then having a 60K month about 1 month after I started the practices. And I'll dive into some of those things right away. But I've also been over $100,000 in debt and had to deal with the stress and the struggle of holding that and carrying that. And for me, growing up, I always had very open beliefs around money just showing up and being so abundant and available. And I never really learned anything about budgeting. And when I got credit cards, to me, I took on the belief that this is allowing me to invest in myself. So I have never struggled to invest in mentorship, to overinvest. Like before I even started my business, I got a new credit card and put $10,000 into my first business coach because I just knew that if I wanted to have success quicker, I would do that by hiring someone. And so I took that uncomfortable leap. I joined a $35,000 mastermind for a year, and at the time of joining it, I had not brought in any money for a while in my business, and I had just walked away from co-coaching for someone else. So I had no income coming in, but I want to share all these different things because I just know that I've learned so much in regards to money and the energetic side of it and all these things. So as I'm about to dive into the different pieces and components, I actually teach all of this inside my Overflow bundle. It's a quantum healing hypnosis bundle filled with hypnosis activations and recordings, so many different trainings diving into each specific part of this process and teaching you everything that I learned to go from the struggle and the debt to having my biggest income months, to calling in money really quickly, to manifesting what seemed really unrealistic at the time to anyone who was sitting in a logical viewpoint, okay? So there's a link for that down below if you're wanting to actually learn these tools in depth and have the hypnosis activations and the recordings. There is a link for all that down below if you want to know more and get started right away. With that said, let's share some of these practices because when I first started doing the mindset work and working through the subconscious and reprogramming and understanding so many of these things, I was very much focused on the root cause and childhood beliefs in the places where our subconscious was first programmed around money. So often I talked about, what were your mother's beliefs, your father's beliefs? What did you experience? Where did you feel lack or scarcity? Or what kind of stories were created around money? So I always felt like it was very greedy, and I had a lot of guilt around wanting money or the nice things that money could buy. And yet I always desired, even as a little girl, I desired the lifestyle of travel and freedom and being able to give back and spend my time and my days doing things that I loved and connecting with humans and animals and nature and just immersing myself in that. And I remember from a very young age being told that it was a really nice dream, but I wouldn't be able to afford it unless I found a wealthy man who would pay for it, or unless I worked 9 to 5 for 60 some years and then did this in my retirement. So those were like the options that were told to me that were available. It was never empowering me as a woman to go out and learn how to receive, how to earn money, how to call it in, how to hold it, how to be smart with it, how to invest it, all these things, right? And I'm sharing this because no matter what you grew up in, I'm sure there were a lot of seeds planted into your subconscious as well around money. And unfortunately, the way the brain works is that we tend to cling and identify with that. And then as we get older, we create that reality. So we think, well, this is what I've been told, and this is the only way to achieve something. Or now the schooling system reinforces certain things, right? So for me, then as I got older, it became, well, you have to be super educated to have success, or that's it. And I didn't want to continue university. I didn't feel good there. None of it felt aligned, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I had the beliefs that now that I'm a dropout, I have no chance, no hope. But with that said, I also grew up watching my dad run a business, and as I got older, it became $1 million business, and we never had, from my understanding, we never had like that amount of money, but he was very busy running this. So I also learned a lot about business and entrepreneurship, and I'm sure that's a huge part of why I felt so pulled to carve my own path and not work for someone else and take my financial freedom into my own hands. So when I started manifesting some of these bigger numbers, let's get into some of the things that I used, because one of the first things was the identity shifting work. As I've just shared, the identity I had at the beginning of this time and starting my business even was an employee mindset. I was programmed to look for someone else to write me a paycheck in exchange for my effort, right? And that's kind of how most of us are taught. And I had to start shifting that and seeing myself as the identity who was the CEO. She was the boss. She was magnetic to money. She was, staying in her lane, doing her actions and believing that that was good enough. And that was a really challenging shift to make because I didn't have the outer validation. I wasn't looking or relying on someone else to say, hey, you did enough. You checked these boxes this week, here's your paycheck. So it was very much about creating the new mindset, like the new mental beliefs around how money worked for me and what I needed to do to open up and receive it. But it was also the energetic work around, okay, if I were already making $5,000 in my business a month, how would I be feeling? What would I be thinking? How would I be carrying myself? And I remember when I first started, $5,000 a month was like huge. That was like, whoa, like huge as in like very felt out of reach, but also very financially abundant because I had never made that much before, really. I had always worked, part-time and worked in the summer and then worked and saved a bunch to then go travel for a long time, but I never had like a solid corporate job. I never had a yearly salary or anything to compare to. So I had to start becoming the version of me where money worked differently. And this is where I see so many people getting hung up on their past and staying in the old identity. And I would say it was probably one of the hardest parts for me because I kept wanting to fall back. And if the money didn't come in the next day, I would be in a panic of like, oh my gosh, I guess I'm not doing things right. And I need to work harder, or I need to prove myself more in order to be worthy of this money. All these connotations that I had associated to how money works, and yet they were all just stories, because the person standing next to me could have completely different ideas of how money works or how much effort they have to put out in order to receive. So I started noticing that someone who grew up with a ton of wealth probably had a very different mindset to me, and probably wasn't as uncomfortable to receive it either. They probably didn't feel guilt or shame around some things. And it gave me the opportunity to start changing the way I saw myself. And if you've followed my channel for a while, you've heard me talk about the self-image and self-image psychology. And that's because the way we see ourselves is how we are then getting the mirror reflection back. So as I saw myself as someone who was an unsuccessful failure dropout, I was showing up in the world very small and collapsed and like sad, and I didn't really have the confidence. When I started to imagine what would the version of me be like who had a $5,000 month in their own business, or what would the $10,000 a month Kara do? And this is how I manifested my first 10K month, was that I started to get really firm in that identity. And I knew if I were already making that amount of money, here's the things I'd be investing in. Here's the way I'd show up. Here's the environments I'd be in. Here's the way I'd speak about myself, or I'd carry myself. Here's the passion I'd have about my offers and the way that I can help women, right? It was a total identity shift from the mentality and the self-image of being bad with money, or not being smart enough, not being good enough. So the identity shifting was a huge starting point. And then came in more of the deeper energetics in the quantum healing hypnosis work, which is when, with the first $20,000 month in my business, I had to learn how to expand my energetic capacity to receive. What I mean by this is that oftentimes we desire more, but if we don't feel worthy, or if we haven't normalized it in our system, then even if we manifest it, we end up losing it right away. You see this a lot with people who win the lottery and a year later they're broke. And you're like, how? How did you win millions of dollars and now you have nothing? You went right back to where you were. But if their nervous system hasn't expanded to feel safe with that amount of money, they're probably a little bit chaotic with it and not doing the smart things, or not investing it accordingly, right? And just the energetic side of things, like we want to be able to feel safe expanding into more. So I had to look at, if that's what the 10K month was for me, in comparison, what would a $20,000 month look like and feel like? And I had to put necessary systems in place in my business so that I'd feel supported to go into that. A $20,000 month when I was working for someone else would have looked like 5 days a week, every hour of the day on client calls, and I would have been burnt out and exhausted. And there's no way I could have sustained that. So I had to look at, if I'm creating this my own way and I want to manifest a bigger amount of money and I want it to feel safe and good, what do I need to have in place for that, right? And that's where the aligned action came in as well. I really started doing hypnosis work. I have a free quantum healing activation. I'll drop that in the description too, which is my money activation. And I was basically going back through the timelines of every chapter in my life and shifting it in my subconscious and in my energy body where I felt lack or scarcity or guilt around money, and rewriting that to see the opposite, so that I was basically like printing into my entire body that money is good and that it's normal to have more and that I'm worthy of more and that I do great things with more and that more just comes to me naturally, and starting to see and feel myself to be magnetic to abundance, shifting the wealth signature from one of scarcity and lack to more. Past life regressions through quantum healing was a big part of this too, because I was able to uncover some really interesting past lives with money, including one where I was an orphaned girl and I lived on the street and I had nothing. I also saw a lifetime as a queen and just living this lavish, abundant lifestyle, but doing so much good with it and being able to like create huge changes in the country or the community that I lived in. I also saw my kind of least favorite, but I think most funny past life that I saw with this money hypnosis work was a lifetime as an accountant. And I was like, no wonder I've hated money and numbers in this life, because I saw this lifetime and he was just like so depressed and so sad, but really good with numbers and like doing the accounting and taxes and all this stuff. And understanding and being able to like integrate these past fractals of self, right? Like aspects of me or my soul in different incarnations, allowed me to also bring it all the way back into the present and be like, ooh, I have so much gathered wisdom and knowledge from all those different experiences. I have the extremes, right? And I have the contrast of the poverty that I had as the little orphan and the contrast of like the abundance of the queen, and getting to normalize and see like what are the things I can take from each of those lifetimes that could support me now and assist me in creating a better money story in this lifetime moving forward. And then that's when eventually it started leading me into one of the practices, and I've shared posts about this as well, was doing work connected to my womb and seeing that this is a literal portal that receives and then births, and it receives and it magnifies and grows and nurtures and then births into the reality. And so I started doing different work, planting in energetically and like in my subconscious, seeing that I was holding a $50,000 month and seeing that like my body was holding it, but also the portal of my womb was holding this, and allowing myself to feel the safety of that and see what that would look like, how that would translate in my reality, the amount of debt on my credit cards I'd be able to pay off, the feeling of normalizing it. So it wasn't like this big thing on a pedestal that I was desperately trying to get to. It was like, just like I would imagine a baby growing, where you're like, you're preparing for it. You know that it's coming and it's inevitable. And hopefully you're just very excited and peaceful about it. And that's how I felt. Like, whether this shows up in 1 month or in 3 months, I know I'm holding it. I know I'm growing this, kind of, in a way. And I am so grateful and so excited about it. And that was when, only a month later, then I ended up having almost a $60,000 month with business payments, unexpected gifts, random rebates and different things coming back into my savings account. And it was just the most surreal experience of how quickly things can change when our logical mind is gone and it's out of the picture, and when we are being an energetic match to the desire. So this is why you've probably heard so many manifestation gurus and experts over the years say, like, there's no difference in difficulty from manifesting $100 to $1 million, because everyone's perception is different. The meaning of that is different to everyone. To some people, $100 is like $1 million. It's like so big, so special. And to others, $100 would be like picking up a penny on the street, where they're like, it doesn't really mean anything to them, right? the meaning we attach to the money is what makes it more difficult or more easy. So when I was wanting my first $10,000 month in my business, I put so much meaning into it and made it so important. And that made it seem more challenging, more out of reach. And I would say that's also why I struggled to hit that consistently for a long time, because I was thinking it was like the end all be all, and I was, praying down to this and begging and desperately wanting to make it happen and thinking I had to work harder, all the nonsense. Whereas when I had the $60,000 manifestation, which was much more, I had never received that much in a month, but I just felt like I want to pay off all my debts and it would be really nice to do that. And I started calling that in. And I didn't put it on this pedestal. I didn't have this massive desperation. I was just like aligning with it and trusting that it was coming, knowing that I was worthy, and not thinking I needed to do more in order to get it. I just really tapped into the frequency of already having it. So these are all different aspects and all different components of the different practices that I used over the years. And the last thing, which I will touch on because I mentioned, was the masculine and feminine side of things, with the masculine structure and support and provision, and the feminine, receiving and creativity and the pleasure, the joy around it, right? And there's so much more to both these sides, because if we feel unsafe around masculine energy, this could be even unsafe around men because of past trauma. Well, money is typically a masculine characteristic. So if you feel like men abandon you, which is something I struggled with a long time, then I also felt like money was going to abandon me. I didn't trust it. I didn't believe that it would show up, right? And you want to get into a state where you see that money is like a best friend, and it's this being that you have a loving relationship with, and it's there to support you, and you're doing good things and supporting it, and it's this beautiful cohesion, because then there's no weirdness, there's no guilt, there's no shame, there's no proving, and there's no force or hustle, right? And having the feminine energetics with money and provision and with receptivity and with all the imagination and all the things you get to do with it, and allowing yourself to really expand and play in that, is so important. Because if it feels like only work or hustle or sacrifice, then that's not going to be supportive to calling in more either. So as I said, these are all things that I teach inside Overflow, which is my quantum healing hypnosis bundle, all about money manifestation and rewriting your energetic signature and shifting into your wealth blueprint, reprogramming your subconscious mind, doing all these things. And there's so much more than the practices I've touched on today right here, but everything that I've shared about is also a part of this course. And it's so powerful in terms of how quickly you can shift things for yourself. So if you want to jump inside and you're ready to change your story, your relationship to money, the link is down below to get started. And I cannot wait to support you in this process and to share all these things that have absolutely transformed my life and continue to transform my life. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you had a lot of light bulbs and a lot of things coming through for you that will assist you moving forward. And I'm sending you so much love. I will see you again soon, and hopefully see you on the inside of Overflow.